There is something happening, and it's happening very quickly. And Tom Horn, our good friend from Skywatch Television, is here to talk about it. Tom Horn, welcome once again to Prophecy Watchers. This is the second program concerning your new book. It's called The Messenger, and it's huge. I've got to tell you that the ideas that are interconnected in The Messenger are very, very current, and they are persuasive. So let's kind of pick up where we left off in our last conversation.
Yeah, so I was making the point in the last program that the reason I wrote The Messenger was just a chance discovery.
Yes.
That 3.5 years to the day earlier than the arrival of Apophis, the date that NASA gave to this asteroid of Friday the 13th, April 2029, 3.5 years earlier to the day, it lands right in the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, the Feast of Tabernacles is connected by some people with the second coming of Jesus because of something Jesus himself said in John when he said to his disciples, "At my Father's house are many mansions." They knew that's a direct reference to the Feast of Tabernacles, when the Hebrews in antiquity had to come from all over the Middle East, wherever they were, to Jerusalem, pitch their tabernacles or tents, their dwelling places around the Temple Mount, because that's where the house of God was. Even Jesus refers to the temple as my Father's house. You've made it a den of thieves. So they knew when he said, "At my Father's house are many mansions, tabernacles, tents, dwellings. If it were not so, I would have told you so." But he's actually talking about the one in heaven, right?
Yes.
And he says, "I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you may be also. If it were not so, I would have told you so. But if I go to prepare a place for you, I am going to come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also." So many people look at this Feast of Tabernacles and that reference, it's almost cryptic, made by Jesus, that does seem to indicate that his second coming could be around, or maybe the rapture could be around a future Feast of Tabernacles. But in 2025, 10 days before that is the Feast of Trumpets. Now, that's the one where Paul, writes to the Corinthians, and he says, "For the trumpet will sound, and the dead in Christ shall rise first, and we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together to meet them in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord." So some people say, no, it's not the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah.
It's the Feast of Trumpets, because Paul said that's when the dead in Christ are going to rise. But in 2025, 120 days before the Feast of Tabernacles is the Feast of Pentecost. And I know, Gary, you've written extensively. You wrote a beautiful article that's actually in the book, The Messenger, that was derived from your Prophecy Watchers magazine on Pentecost. And why do you believe that Pentecost is a candidate for either the rapture or the second coming?
I believe that, let's put it this way, I believe what the Jews believe. The Jews, faithful Jews, stay up all night on Pentecost. And they have a teaching, it's called Tikkun Le'il Shavuot, teachings for the night of Pentecost. And they study the verses in that document all night long on Pentecost Eve. In other words, they devote themselves entirely to the study of what the Bible says about Pentecost, and they have a traditional belief that sometime around the middle of the night on Pentecost Eve, the heavens will open for a brief moment, and the one who is studying these verses will be especially enlightened. Well, I take that one step further, and I say, couldn't that be the heavens opening to receive the children of the Lord, as in the rapture of the church? And so Pentecost becomes, for me, a perfect rapture date.
Now, am I reading too much into it to say, okay, in 2025, 3.5 years to the day before the arrival of Apophis, which I believe is wormwood, which
Right.
would be the middle of the tribulation. So that little package all kind of just comes together very nicely, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does.
But then 10 days before being the Feast of Trumpets, and then 120 days before being Pentecost, and 120 is the number that represents, it's the biblical numerology for the end of man. My spirit will not always strive with man, his years shall be 120. Moses was a type of that, living to be 120. I mean, that alone should be enough to make people say, wait a minute. Given the fact that Apophis is arriving 3.5 years later, should we look at 2025 as a candidate for what? The rapture, the second coming of Christ? And then add to that numerous scientific studies that we don't have time to get into.
Right.
The Fourth Turning that was written in 1997 by historians William Strauss and Neil Howell. I don't have time to go into the whole book, recommend everybody read it. It's not a religious book, but it's
Right.
very prophetic in its context. They set 2025 as the date when we are going to reach the apex of the Fourth Turning and very likely the arrival of a totalitarianistic form of global government, either in America or something that America is subject to. Science studies that were done.
Now, back to a verse we talked about on our previous program, Revelation 8:10, is the third angel sounding a trumpet, and a great star falls from heaven. And that's what connects all this together.
Yeah, a great star, which is the Greek word aster, it's from which we make the word asteroid. So now think about Apophis. Is this a great star? What is his name? Neil deGrasse or something like that? He's the famous astronomer.
That's close enough for me.
Close enough, people can figure it out. But,
Yeah.
but he recently was on the news and he said the arrival of Apophis in 2029, he said, first of all, we cannot with certitude, that's important to hear him say that, say exactly what the trajectory of Apophis is going to be. But NASA's saying don't worry about it. It's not likely to hit the Earth.
Right.
But even Neil said it's going to come so close to the Earth, it'll be closer than the satellites that are in orbit around this planet, probably knock out some of those satellites. And astronomers that I quote in both of these books say you can't say that a rock as big as Apophis traveling tens of thousands of miles through space over the next, 8 years.
Right.
All kinds of little things that could ping pong off of it, changing its trajectory. You cannot say with certitude it's going to come that close to the Earth and not impact the Earth. Now here's what NASA tells us. Apophis it's going to be the largest stone in known history, not counting what might have happened with the dinosaurs, though I think that could have been the fall of Lucifer, but not counting that. This is going to be the largest rock ever to come this close to planet Earth, and it does have a risk of impacting the Earth. It's on the NEOWISE list. It's on the Near Earth Object list. And they say that if it does impact the Earth in 2029, it's likely to come down along the coastline of California and Mexico, which, as you know, is the Cascadia subduction zone. So it could trigger a whole domino effect of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth. It could literally crack the mantle of the Earth. Gary, they say that it will be equal to 65,000 of the atomic bombs that we dropped on Hiroshima at the end of World War II, sinking the Japanese island of Nagasaki. 65,000 going off all at one time in one place.
Well, the end of the matter here is that it falls upon a third part of the river and upon the fountains of the waters, and it poisons the waters. Now, that's horrible. And we don't know what kind of poison it is. It's absinthe or wormwood would be a deadly poison of some kind.
Yeah, so now this raises another theory that I have. And I lay a lot of this out in the book, and so people can read the book.
And by the way, again, this is Tom Horn's new book. It's called The Messenger. In fact, that's your name for Apophis.
Yeah. The messenger, because in antiquity, both in the Bible and outside of the Bible, ancients perceived comets, asteroids, as the messengers of the gods. In fact, here's a little interesting factoid, right? Nepheses, if I'm saying that right, was an ancient Greek term for Apollo, but when Apollo is viewed as an asteroid moving through the air and he becomes an omen, a dark omen, an omen of doom, right? Well, in the very next chapter, Revelation 9, it says another asteroid, star, falls from the heavens, and to him is given the keys to the bottomless pit. Well, when he opens up the bottomless pit, guess who's down there? Apollo. Abaddon, Apollyon, the very entity that the ancient Greeks saw as an asteroid of the end times that would bring chaos and darkness and doom upon the earth, is connected in the very same verses in Scripture, the very next chapter.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the good things about your book. It links several different lines of ancient history, philosophy, prophecy all together, and it gets kind of complex, but you can handle it because he writes it very clearly. But we don't usually link all of these different traditions together into one event, but you've done it in your book.
Well, again, it's not just the Greeks looking at Apollo that way. In the book of Matthew 2:2, the Magi, what does it say? They come to Bethlehem. Why? Because we have seen his asteroid. We have seen his star in the east, and we have followed it here to find him who is born King of the Jews. So they too perceived an asteroid as an omen, but in this case an omen, a messenger from God pointing to the birth of divinity, to the birth of nobility. So it raises the question, with all the stuff that I lay out in this book about the year 2025, if an asteroid heralded the first arrival of Jesus Christ, might an asteroid also herald the second coming of Jesus Christ? And by 2025, people with even just a basic telescope will be able to sit at their home and look up into the sky and see Apophis in the distance racing for its meeting with planet Earth. So might an asteroid also herald his second coming? Is that what Matthew 24:30 is talking about? For then shall all of the tribes of the earth mourn when they shall see the sign of the Son of Man coming in the heavens. They definitely see something, and it's in the heavens, and it's coming.
We do not know what the sign is. It's just a sign.
That's right.
And we've always said that when the time comes, people will know what the sign is.
Right.
We're getting close.
I think we're getting close, and here's the other thing that you made a point a moment ago about the waters becoming bitter after the impact of wormwood. And see, I believe, Gary, Tom Horn is not the scholar that you are, not by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just an old fat preacher who happens to be a publisher now, and sometimes I write books, but I speculate about things that I find to be interesting, because there's a whole conjunction of other things pointing to the year 2025. You've had Ken Johnson on your program talking about the Essenes and how accurate they were. 200 and some years before the birth of Christ, they named the year that he would arrive, the year that he would die in 32 AD, the fact that he would be God in flesh. That was not a traditional Hebrew belief, that he would die for the Gentiles. This is amazing, highly accurate prophecies. Well, guess what? They also prophesied 2,200 years ago that mankind will enter into its last generation in the year 2025. There's just so many things that point to that year that I'm not saying that's when the rapture is going to happen or the second coming of Jesus. I'm saying there's a lot here to look at, and then when you couple that with everything else that's going on in the world. But back to my point, old preacher Tom Horn preached himself plumb out of the text again, right? And that is, if you look at Revelation 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, finally arrive at 13.
Yes.
And in Revelation 13, he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. I believe that Apophis is carrying an alien microorganism on it that has a virus in it. And on impact with the earth, first of all, that's what poisons the waters, but it also rapidly gives rise to a contagion that's going to make coronavirus look like a walk in the park. I predict that literally millions of people will be dying by the hour with the arrival, because we'll have absolutely no natural immunity to this virus. It's an Andromeda strain, right? It's bringing something with it the world has never seen before, and it does seem to explain much of what is happening, all the way from the waters becoming bitter over to a trigger event in Revelation 13 that causes everybody to have to receive this mark of the beast. It was my wife, Nita, 15 years ago that came up with the theory that that's going to be a virus and a vaccine is going to be the mark of the beast. And it's become probably the most popular idea on the planet. I definitely believe in it. But I believe that Gary, that explains a lot about what we are reading here, starting with the arrival of Apophis in the third trumpet of the book of Revelation 8.
Well, Tom, I'd like to interrupt our great conversation for just a moment and inform our audience of how they can take advantage of the Prophecy Watcher, our monthly magazine dedicated to Bible prophecy.
Each month, the Prophecy Watcher magazine arrives in thousands of mailboxes all around the world. Our newly expanded 48-page magazine features cutting-edge prophecy teachers writing about things you may never hear about in church, featuring articles from Gary Stearman, Randall Price, L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salus, Jonathan Cahn, and many others. Examine the giants of Genesis 6, the future wars prophesied for Israel, the rapture of the church, prophecies about the Antichrist and the tribulation, the rebuilt Jewish temple, the book of Revelation, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and so much more. You can subscribe to the digital version of the Prophecy Watcher for $20 a year, a huge savings to our international friends. You can also subscribe to the print version for $30 a year. And for a very limited time, we're offering a lifetime subscription for $100 to the digital magazine or the print magazine for $150. It truly is the gift that just keeps on giving. Just call the toll-free number on the screen or visit our online bookstore to take advantage of this limited time offer.
We're talking with Tom Horn of Skywatch Television, and he has the most interesting book. It's called The Messenger. And what a message. That message, and I'm glancing over here at Revelation 8 again, and I'm looking at first trumpet, second trumpet, third trumpet, fourth trumpet. By this time, by the time those trumpets sound, this is not going to be a world you would recognize. A number of different things have happened, including a global, if you will, dictatorship, except it's going to be far more severe than any dictatorship the world has ever seen up to that time.
Right. Yeah, so the role that America might play in the arrival of a global dictatorship. 10 years ago, the highest intelligence agencies in the United States, working with like 15 nations across Europe, they produced a document. Anybody can Google this and download it from government websites and read it. But it's called Global Governance 2025. There's that year again.
Oh, really?
Yeah. At a critical juncture. And what they imagined, these intelligence agencies, is what could happen? What trigger event, or events plural, could set in motion the need for all of the nations of the world to lay down their differences and rapidly come together in mutual defense of one another against an unprecedented existential threat. Almost sounds like Ronald Reagan standing before the United Nations saying, "I often wonder how quickly we would lay down our differences if suddenly we were posed with a threat from outer space," right?
Yeah, I remember.
But these guys are saying the same thing. They imagined it as being here by 2025. Now, what trigger events did they see? Number one, the incoming of an asteroid in which we learn right?
They
NASA
actually,
had-
they said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What an
Yeah.
amazing statement.
That suddenly become, I was going to put it in my words, that NASA's been covering up. Their words, it suddenly becomes obvious that this thing is going to impact Earth, and it is big enough to represent the destruction of all life on Earth. The only asteroid we know that's coming close to that, that's going to be here by 2029, is Apophis. And the whole series of events that it could set into motion. That was one of the things they said, as it becomes obvious, all nations of the world rush together to form a single global government, right? Because we have to work on behalf of each other. They also said around that same time, there could be a global pandemic that then is going to require mandatory stuff like vaccinations, the suspension of civil liberties, all of which then also set into motion the arrival of a global totalitarian form.
And they said this when?
This is over a decade ago.
All right.
And again, anybody can go Google it. It's just called Global Governance 2025. Right. By the way, because you've had experts on your program lately talking about artificial intelligence and the dangers and threat.
Yeah.
Guess what? From memory now, but I think it's around page 35 of that report. Guess what they also list as a trigger that could set this whole thing in motion? The emergence of a new form of humanity. Now, again, these are not geeks sitting in a Microsoft office somewhere, meandering around about their next space novel. This was the highest intelligence agencies in the United States and Europe working together, and they imagined that through biotechnology and combining that with artificial intelligence systems, a new form of humanity could emerge. Well, guess what? The prophecy of the Cumae Sibyl on the dollar bill, Anno et coeptus, novus ordo seclorum, these are derived from her ancient prophecy. But what was it she said? Not only would a global new age come, a new world order, over which Apollo, who's identified in Revelation 17:8 and other places as the spirit that's going to inhabit the Antichrist, not only would he arrive, but it says he will come down as a new form of humanity. 'Tis thine own Apollo reigns when the golden age rolls over again and gods and men are unified once again. It sounds very much like the mighty men of old which were born out of the sin of the watchers.
Does. We have come full circle, is what you're saying. Well, the book by Thomas Horn is called The Messenger, and the messenger is in the heavens, and you need to read all about it.
The Bible tells us of a time in the future when the powers of heaven will be shaken and our world will face the judgment of God. If you're not familiar with Bible prophecy, it's called the tribulation period, and it lasts for 7 long years. The good news? The Bible tells us how we can escape this terrible time of judgment. Tom Horn has written 2 engaging books based on his research surrounding the date an asteroid is scheduled to arrive, Friday the 13th, 2029. The Wormwood Prophecy and his brand new book, The Messenger, describe the Apophis asteroid and the strange biblical circumstances surrounding this tribulation prophecy. We'd love to send you The Wormwood Prophecy and The Messenger for your gift of $50 or more to support the work of Prophecy Watchers. In addition to free shipping in the USA, we'll include a special bonus, a free copy of Tom's groundbreaking book on the ancient prophecies of the popes, Petrus Romanus. We're calling it the Signs in the Heaven package. Just visit our online bookstore or call the toll-free number on your screen and help us continue the important work of this ministry. One of our main goals is to keep people out of the tribulation, a time the Bible calls the worst time in the history of the world. If you're interested in learning more about God's plan for the future, we're offering 4 of Tom's newly released books, The Wormwood Prophecy, The Messenger, Lawless, and The Antichrist and the Final Solution. For your gift of $100 or more, we'll send you these 4 books, ship them to you for free, and include 2 400-page bonus books from Tom, Petrus Romanus and Exo Vaticana. These 4 new books will bring you up to date on the timing and events of the tribulation. Just call the toll-free number on the screen or visit our online bookstore and ask for the Tom Horn Wormwood package. Thanks for supporting the work of Prophecy Watchers. In addition to our monthly magazine, The Prophecy Watcher, we also offer a free email newsletter and the Prophecy Watcher app for your phone or tablet. Stay up to date on biblical events as we get closer to the rapture of the church. Until then, we'll see you next week, here, there, or in the air.
Well, I really hope you avail yourself of this book, The Messenger. Let's wrap up and put this all in an easily understood little package. Something is coming. I think people know this, Tom. I think, and particularly Christians, they have in their mind that we're on a trajectory right now, and nothing is going to stop it. It looks like everything is drifting and careening in some cases toward all the things we've seen in Bible prophecy. Absolutely.
And again, will America play some kind of a role in this? All of the polling that shows right now that, especially among the Z-Gen and the millennials, but even some of the nuclear age, that they prefer now by a majority socialism over capitalism.
Yes.
But I think that this is all necessary. I have always believed that Antichrist would represent a form of a socialist or Marxist even form of government. Why? Well, because you have to get rid of this American, rugged individualism, right? Gun-toting, God-fearing. You got to somehow suppress these people. So right now, doesn't it even feel like we are seeing George Orwell's 1984 actually really playing out now?
And we have technology that Orwell never even dreamed about, artificial intelligence, global satellite technology, which we've touched upon from time to time. All of these things moving in one direction only, and that's the George Orwell's direction, complete social control. So there we are. Tom, the messenger, again, the messenger is there. There can be no denying that there is this thing in orbit, and the Lord gave you a particular look at the thing that was in orbit. It would be, I think, incumbent upon our leaders to keep the panic at a minimum if they knew something was going to hit the earth. And then God says, no, I'm going to show Tom Horn something.
Well, but in the book, I quote top 100 scientists who assert that NASA, in peer-reviewed astronomy magazine articles, peer-reviewed journals,
yes,
that assert that NASA is involved with a cover-up and that the likelihood of impact is far greater than they are admitting at this time.
I just wish we had more time to talk about this. Again, Tom Horn's book, The Messenger, will give you much, much more information than we had time to. Thanks for coming by, Tom.
Great to be with you again, Gary.
And may the Lord bless your work.
You too.
I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, we're watching. You be watching too.